In America, they say that justice is supposed to be fair, that justice is supposed to be colorblind, that justice is supposed to be compassionate. But we're all here today because we know that is not the case. And I want to thank Mr. Bonta, Mr. Hertzberg. I want to thank Otto and Shamika for telling their stories. I want to thank all of you for being part of a movement to ensure that justice is all those things. I stand here not just as a joint author of this bill, but as a former member of law enforcement, as a former criminal prosecutor who used to ask for bail. And when I was a criminal prosecutor, it struck me often that it was unfair that if you had money, even if you were guilty or likely to commit another crime, you did not have to sit in jail. Or conversely, if you were poor, if you couldn't post bail and get out of jail, even if you were innocent, or if your case got dismissed, you had to face that injustice. Like many aspects of our criminal justice system, whether you can hire a good attorney or whether you can pay bail, we know that poverty should not be a crime. And our state's bail system is broken. It is time for real reform. If you're arrested and poor, you shouldn't be forced to choose between keeping your job or your home but going into debt, or conversely, not going into debt but losing your job or your home. And we know that we have a system that disproportionately impacts communities of color.
I was falsely accused of something. I went to jail for 5 days. When I got out of jail, through the bail process, through the situation, my bail was $165,000 initially. And then through the arraignment, my bail got to be down to $85,000. And that's after I had hundreds of letters of people in my community coming out in my support and saying that I was a decent human being. And even still, inside the courtroom, the district attorney said that, oh, it seems like he's a threat to society, and the judge went with that. I was still criminalized based on these false charges. After spending 5 days in jail, it kind of dawned on me that if my mother had not had stepped up with her taking money out of her retirement account, someone who's worked for the Postal Service for 25 years, where we've lived poor, scraping by, all that time, for her to take out money so that I can be there for my family, so I can support my family while I'm waiting to go to pretrial where the charges were dropped. And with the support of organizations like Debug, I was really happy that I was able to get that support, but not everybody has that opportunity.
There are a few situations that's difficult, as when you get that phone call from someone you love saying they were falsely arrested and are on the verge of losing everything if you can't bail them out. My baby brother is a young black male that has fallen prey to the system. He was picked up outside of our family home because the police said he resembled someone who was reported doing robberies in our community. We waited for 2 weeks before the court set bail. When bail was finally set, they did not consider the fact that he was 3 credits away from just a few months of finishing school. They didn't look at the fact that he had no resources. They didn't listen or see the women, the family, his sister, me, his mother, his aunts and cousins, who ultimately had to pay that cost. Instead, the judges set bail for $45,000. When you leave the court, the first thing you see is bail agents. They tell you if you give them a non-refundable fee of 10%, your loved one can come home. $4,500 may not seem like a lot, but for a family like ours, it may as well have been $10 million. Everyone acted as though this was normal, so I thought it must be my fault that I couldn't bail my brother out. To this day, I live with immense guilt and sadness over my failure to pull together that money. I didn't make bail for him. And sadly to say, the charges were dropped. And with that, my brother just gave up hope. And he, having spent 4 months behind bars for something he never did is awful.
Our lieutenant governor referred to the recent lawsuit against my city, our city of San Francisco. And let me quote our sheriff, who said, quote, "A system that allows one person access to immediate freedom through the payment of cash, while another person with the same criminal history and charges who lacks financial resources remains behind bars seems unfair." We have a city attorney who has refused to defend this state bail law in court. We all know there is no correlation between being able to afford bail and whether someone is going to flee or commit another crime. In the Bay Area, in Alameda County, Santa Clara County, and yes, San Francisco, we have examples of counties that are already using risks assessments, evidence-based practices, and a person's criminal history, and public safety has not been impacted. And as Mr. Bonta said, rather than spending $100 a day on each of the thousands of Californians who sit in jail every day waiting for trial simply because they're poor, we should be investing some of the $4.5 million a day statewide on education and jobs. So with that, I am honored to be part of this movement. The arc of justice, we know, will bend in the direction that we need to. Godspeed and thank you.